Hello, George Hepworth here, Grover Park Consulting. Let's continue our project to build a PowerApps application called Mike's Mobile Library. Mike's Mobile Library is a catalog application to manage the catalog of books and DVDs and potentially magazines and VHS tapes and so on that a library owner might have in their library. We started out with volumes in my personal library as data, sample data to get us started. In the previous video, I showed you the Microsoft Access relational database application, the way it works with the SharePoint lists, which store the data, and went through all of the functions and features of that application to show you how it might work in the desktop world. Today we're going to move over to the browser-based side, the cloud side, the PowerApps side. And here we're going to take a look at the PowerApps application, which implements the same type of interface to the same data. Remember, the data is stored in SharePoint lists on Microsoft 365. The Access front-end interface links to those SharePoint lists. The PowerApps application we're going to look at today also links to those same SharePoint lists. I already have the browser launched. I'll open the development environment. Launch PowerApps. As we're waiting for it to open, it takes just a minute for it to locate and update everything. Pick our apps section and we'll pick Mike's Mobile Library. We have different options when we first select it. We can either edit it or play it. There are other things we can do with it, which we'll talk about in detail as we get deeper into the actual development. We'll start by editing it, and again, it has to load various elements and establish connections to the data and so on as it starts the application up, and that can take from a few seconds to several seconds to complete. As we're waiting, I'll remind you that I chose SharePoint lists partly because they're integrated into the same environment, and partly because other data storage locations that I might have chosen, such as SQL Azure or a SQL Server database, are what are called premium services, and they cost extra. So using SharePoint lists has both of those advantages: lower cost as well as little less management to work with them. This is the design environment for all PowerApps applications. The navigation pane here on the left is reminiscent of what we might see in the Access environment. We have different screens. We don't have forms, we have screens here. There are a large, fairly significant number of screens, and you may be wondering as I show you this and think back to what I've said before. Yes, this is more than simply the extension of one function into the cloud. That sort of evolved. My original intention was to focus on taking cover photos, because with a smart device like a phone or a tablet, I can actually use a built-in camera to take a picture of a book, whereas doing the same thing with a book in the browser interface using a desktop or a laptop computer, and I would have to have a camera plugged in like this, the webcam, for example, and then hold the book up to the camera and take a picture of it that way. And I could do that, but it seemed like this would be a great example of exactly the kind of thing that we talk about when we say you could extend or leverage one aspect of this application into the mobile environment and take advantage of the ability that offers us over working strictly on the desktop. However, as I started building this thing, it became clear that I probably want to do more than just take pictures. For example, once I took a picture, I might want to attach it to the book that it belongs to. And then I think, well, maybe I could just go ahead and do authors. And all of a sudden I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and create a parallel application entirely in PowerApps just to see how much I could actually accomplish with my limited background and experience in the PowerApps world. I'm an Access developer. That's where I come from. That's where I live. But if I could do this, anybody can do this. Any Access developer who wants to extend the range of his own or her own toolkit, skill set, so on, should be able to do the same thing in a fairly quick, expedient way. I chose the tablet interface as opposed to a phone interface, based partly on that decision that I wanted something that I could run the full application, and the greater real estate that I get by using the tablet interface as opposed to just the portrait view that you get on a phone seemed like a good idea. So this is designed for a tablet. It's in landscape mode, and I get roughly twice as much real estate, I think, as I would on a phone. I don't have the exact numbers. I could look them up. But basically, this interface allows me a lot more flexibility in designing the screens for use on a mobile device. This does work well, acceptably well, on a smartphone, because I've taken almost all of the cover photos that you'll see on my smartphone using this same application. We're going to play it now. Menu down the left, just like we had in the Access world, except these are all command buttons as opposed to a list box. If I select Publications, I go to a different screen. And on this screen, I have a gallery listing all of the volumes currently in my library, or the catalog for my library. I have to keep that distinction in mind because it's important. This is the catalog. The library itself in the other room is much, much, much bigger. This is simply the catalog that I have completed so far. You'll notice right away that in this environment, we have the ability to display the cover image. In addition to SQL Server and SQL Azure being premium services, that Azure blob storage account is also a premium service, which costs extra to use. So keep that in mind. I'm going to do a little bit of filtering here. SH brought me down 2 publications. Shelters of Stone, but it also found Fellowship of the Ring, because this is a contains search, which we can do here. We can implement a contains search in the Access side, but it takes quite a bit more work to do. This is a native function here. I actually have 1 DVD cataloged so far and 1 volume. We can filter by genres: literary fiction, military history. We have 1 book on military history. Let's see what else. I think we have a dystopian novel, Waiting for Godot. So other people may catalog that differently. I think of it as dystopian. We can look at volumes by publisher and by media type. So we have 3 volumes so far published by Valentine. We can edit a given volume. loads another screen. This is opened up from a gallery in the browse version to a form on this screen where we can actually edit the information about this book. On the left-hand side of the screen, from here to here, we have a form which allows us to edit. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have two galleries, and you can see right away one of the reasons for using this landscape view in the tablet format is that I can do this. I can put these two galleries here. This one shows the link between this publication and this author, and we also have the ability to select any given image from our library and place it on the form. Notice that it took a few seconds for that to actually populate the images. That's because it's a fairly heavy screen for a PowerApps application. A lot of stuff going on here. We also have the ability to link the author and creator on a different screen. We can take the cover photo, and this would be used primarily, again, in the mobile world, on a phone or a tablet. I have the ability to change the name of the image used. So, for example, this is 1984.png. If I wanted to change it manually, I could do that. Or I could simply select it from the gallery and restore it. And I'll go ahead and save that so that I don't lose my correct image. This button launches the publisher screen, so I can add new publishers. If I get to this point and say, whoops, I got a publisher that I haven't previously identified, I can add that here. List of all the publishers that I've identified so far. We can edit any one of them or add a new one. Linking authors and creators brings me to another screen. Again, we have a gallery for the publications, a gallery for the authors, and a gallery showing the publication author pairs. These are all linked to tables: publications, authors, and the junction table for publications and authors. So let's select 1984, and that updates to show 1984 was written by George Orwell. We can come back here. Professional Access 2013 Programming has 4 co-authors. We can add additional authors or delete one. And if we need to add a new name to our author list, this launches the screen where we can add and edit authors. Go back. We'll take a quick look at the cover photo in a minute. This launches the same publications and author screen, so we can get to it in 2 different ways. This is simply the list of publishers that we just saw. Same thing, we can get to it 2 different ways. Participants, remember the idea of borrowing, lending, buying, selling volumes. That was part of what I showed you in the first video in phase 1. Wanted to be able to track how books came into the library and what happened to them once they were there. So we have a list of participants. There are 4 entities which are organizations. Some books are purchased from Amazon. Some books were purchased from the USU bookstore. Magazines were purchased from the Wyoming Game and Fish. And Rocks Publishing donated an author's copy of the book that I worked on. So that one was not purchased, it was donated. I, as the developer and library owner, I'm the owner of the sample data that's going into this development version. The ultimate library owner will be my friend Mike, and we added a second name to support the ability to borrow or lend volumes to the library or borrow items from the library. And again, we can edit one of them, or we can add a new one. If we go back, we're at the main menu. The check-in, check-out screen allows us to select a book or a publication and indicate where it was purchased, came from Amazon, the approximate value, the date on which it was purchased, and the current owner. This is the same. We saw these same statuses or roles for participants in the Access environment. It shows only the title. It doesn't show the extended description here. Let's go back and we'll pick that up. Now, again, this one doesn't show those extended descriptions. So that's a quick look at the basic functionality. I'll take a look now at the cover photo and show this to you here. I can't actually demo this part while I'm recording a video because I've discovered that the recording software captures the camera to use during the recording of the video, and that ties it up so that it can't be used here. It's either not set up properly, is currently in use, and that's the one that applies, or it's improperly configured. But if we were using this in the phone, we would see a preview of what we're going to take, snap it, name it, save it to the library. In this environment, I really don't want to assign an image to a publication because I'm going to get this kind of wonky view from the webcam. But on the smartphone, we have the option to actually assign it to a publication at the same time we take the picture. So I think we have seen all of the same functions and features that we saw on the Access side. Parallel one another in some ways. They're laid out differently because the different environments we're in, but the functionality, the ability to do the same things is there, with the exception of the fact that in this environment we will be able to take a picture of the cover of the book and attach it directly to that cover, or excuse me, to that book. So in our next video, we'll start diving behind the scenes. We'll look at each of the elements of this application as we build it, starting with the table design. Remember that the tables are actually SharePoint lists. I'll start there. I'll go back to Access, open the tables in the relationship window so you can see the relationships as well as simply the tables themselves. The tables are SharePoint lists which were actually created originally as SharePoint lists. If you want to learn more about that, you can actually find a number of videos, and I'll link some of them in the discussion below, on the migration of existing Access tables to SharePoint lists. I started with SharePoint with the lists because I knew that's where I was going anyway. Built the lists, then linked them into Access. I could have gone the other way. That was just a matter of deciding I wanted to see how it worked more than anything else. So with that, I will wrap up phase 1, day 2, and in the next phase we'll begin looking at what's behind the scenes here. If you like what you've seen so far, please do subscribe. Hit the like button, that helps. And keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. We'll have a new volume or a new video up soon.